Hi, this is Michelle from Michelle's Macarons, and today I'm going to be answering some of your frequently asked questions about macarons. And I think I'm going to make this a series, so this is part 1. If you want to see a part 2, comment below with some macaron questions that you have that I didn't answer. Can you freeze macarons? I like to put them in the little individual sealed bags that I have. Go here to see what I'm talking about. And then I like to put that in an airtight container and put it in the freezer. And when I say airtight, I mean just like a Tupperware or something that makes it so it won't smell and taste like all the other stuff in the freezer or fridge. Like, it doesn't have to be like so airtight you could hold water in it, but just make it sure it's something that's like a Tupperware container that seals and just keeps most of the air out. Then you have to really make sure you get them to room temperature before you eat them. So I've also had questions about condensation on the frozen macarons, and I just make sure not to touch them while they're freezing. So I put them out and then let them get to room temperature, don't touch them. Then they're great. Okay? I thought they started to lose their flavor in the freezer after a couple months, but my mother just tried a strawberry cheesecake macaron that was in the freezer for a year, and she said it was delicious. So I would never sell that, but if you're just keeping them for your family, I'd say you could go a couple months at least. Okay. What is maturing? In so many of my videos, I say fill the macaron, let it mature for 8 hours or 24 hours if you can. Go to this video if you have never heard that before. And some people say, what the heck is maturing? That is when you take a macaron shell, you fill it with the filling of your choice, like buttercream, ganache, whatever you want. Then put the other shell on top and put it in the fridge in a airtight container, and then let it mature for, I say you have to go at least overnight to really get the flavors to taste good and the texture. But if you have the time, do 24 hours because that's when they're best. So maturing means filling the macaron and putting it in the fridge in an airtight container. You have to fill the macarons for it to be considered maturing. So macarons that won't dry, that's most of the time because it's really humid. So you can take a fan. If you have a ceiling fan, turn that on. If you don't, get like a little fan, a rotating fan that you can put on your macarons. Or if you can, get a dehumidifier and put that in your kitchen and try to really get it dry in there. Maybe turn your air conditioner on if you have one. Shut your windows. And the fan is my best advice. When I didn't have an air conditioner and it was really humid, I wouldn't even shut the windows. I would keep the windows open because it was so hot in there, and I would just turn a ceiling fan on or the oscillating fan to get the macarons dry. Just make sure it's not on high speed. Okay. Oh, piping bigger batches. So I have a lot of people ask, if you're piping a bigger batch, do you pipe it all out at once and then just have it drying the whole time? And do you have to worry about the last trays drying too much? But if you're making macarons in a home kitchen with just a standard size KitchenAid mixer, you can't make enough to worry about them drying too long. As long as you're putting them in the oven, as soon as you can, put the first tray in the oven, take it out, let the oven heat up again, then put the second tray in. If you're doing that and really just putting them in as fast as you can, then you don't have to worry about the last one. Just make sure you're putting it in as soon as it dries. So keep an eye on it. And if you are using a fan, I would just put the fan on the first trays and not on the last ones, because by the time you get to those, they'll be dry. But I've never had a problem with that. I would just let them sit and then bake one at a time. How to ship macarons, that's a question I get a lot. So I made a whole video about that, so go watch that. If you want, my advice is still to not ship macarons, but if you want to ship them anyway, go here and I show you what I do when I do ship them. I don't. Okay, my favorite food coloring. I get asked that a lot. I use liquid. I just love the liquid food coloring. I like the texture it gives the shell, but you have to be really careful, and I don't do a lot of really dark colors. I keep mine usually pretty pastel, so I'm able to use liquid food coloring because I don't need too much. But I just use Kroger brand food coloring. Both of those. But if you don't have a Kroger, any liquid food coloring would work. But a lot of people really hate liquid food coloring with French macarons. So gel is good, powder food coloring is good. I will link in the description some brands that I've used. But if you're trying to get a really dark color, I would do powdered. But I usually am just doing pastel, and the liquid's good for me. But a lot of people hate liquid and would say, make sure you're absolutely not using liquid with macarons. So I would maybe try the gel first if you're just starting. No, if you're just starting, I wouldn't use any food coloring, but then the second time, once you get it down, then maybe try the gel. If you're enjoying this video or learning something, let me know by hitting the like button below. Okay, oh, this is a fun one. How do you take pictures of your macarons? So for most, if you go on my Instagram account, the majority of the pictures up until like a couple months ago, I've been using my iPhone, and it wasn't even the newer iPhone. So use your cell phone camera. I mean, as long as you have, I would say the most important thing with good food photos is really good lighting. And the majority of my Instagram photos, I used a window light. So if you have a window light, just put your macarons right by the window and use a reflector board. I just used a poster board. I just used the white side of a poster board to kind of bounce that light off so there weren't that many shadows. And then I took a lot of overhead shots with my iPhone because I didn't have a lot of cute backgrounds. I just used like a white, actually it was an Amazon box opened up with marble contact paper on top. So that is what I used for years. Since I think first started, I used this old Amazon box, marble contact paper, my iPhone, a window, and a poster board, okay? I brought that anywhere I moved. I had that set up. It was the same everywhere. But now I got a Canon, but I got one of the really old Canons. I think it's a T2i or something. It's a pretty old Canon camera, and I just use the 50 lens. So do you want me to do a video on taking pictures? I'm not like a professional food photographer, obviously, but I have just learned along the way. So if you want, comment below and I will make a whole video about how I take my pictures, and just the least amount you need to know to take good pictures, because that's what I'm all about. So yeah, let me know if you want me to do a full video on how to take pictures of your macarons or your baked goods or whatever, because you can do it really cheap at first. That's what I did for probably 6 years, just really cheap setup and my iPhone or whatever phone camera you have. Oh, packaging, my favorite packaging. I made a whole video on that, so go here for macaron packaging and labels and like single packaging for farmers markets and stuff like that. Oh, why do my macarons have tiny feet? So I've had a lot of people ask that, like they'll be bigger in the oven and then when they take them out they'll kind of shrink. That could be from too much food coloring. Like I still get that. If I use too much liquid food coloring or even too much gel or powder, the feet get really tiny, which is okay. They still taste fine. You could still sell them, but that could also be from over mixing the batter. So once you whip your meringue, you add your almond flour and powdered sugar and you're folding it. If you overfold it, that could lead to shorter feet. And under whipping the meringue could lead to shorter feet. So think about it. If you didn't whip the meringue enough when you whip the egg whites and the granulated sugar together, if you didn't whip it enough, it won't have a lot of air in it, so it won't be as tall. So if you're under whipping your meringue, then you could have shorter feet as well. Oh, this is asked a lot. How do you store them? Like, do they have to be refrigerated? Do they have to be filled? Can you freeze the shells without filling them? So I say keep them in the fridge. Anytime I've ever left shells out at room temperature, they get really hard. So as soon as they cool down to room temperature after I bake them, then I will put them in the fridge. I'll take them off the sheet, put them in the fridge, or fill them as soon as I can, then put them in the fridge to mature. So I noticed that if I put the shells only in the fridge, then they start to get a little fragile after a couple days. So I try to fill them as soon as I can, then put them in the fridge. But if you're not going to be able to fill your shells right away, I would freeze them. Then take them out, fill them, and put them in the fridge to mature, or put them back in the freezer. But I would try to avoid freezing, thawing, fridge as much as you can. Ideally, I will bake a batch. While they're drying and cooling and baking, I will be making the fillings. Then they will come out of the oven. I'll let them cool completely. Then I will fill them and put them in the fridge to mature. That's ideal. If you want to see other videos like this and macaron recipes and stuff like that, hit the subscribe button and the bell next to it to be notified whenever I come out with a new video. Oh, how do you make multiple colors in one batch? I have that question a lot. Like if someone wants 3 different colors, but they only want to make one batch of 40 macarons or whatever, how to split that batch up into 3 different colors. So what I do, because I split batches all the time because I make one huge batch and then I split that into multiple batches, I will make the meringue, fold in the almond flour and powdered sugar. So do the macaronage, but I will stop at 40. Because that is when I figured 40 counts. So I still have to count how many times I fold. It's just the best way to get it consistent. I will fold until the count of 40 because that's when I think that most of the almond flour and powdered sugar is incorporated, and the next folds after that are just getting the texture right. So that's when I stop at the count of 40, and then if you want, I'll give you a lot of details here if you want. Then I will separate it into 3 or however many batches I'm separating it in. And the way that I do that is I will, before I've already done all this, I will weigh my bowls. So I know exactly how much my bowl weighs, and I have it written down on the inside of my cupboard. That will be helpful then in this next step. So you have your scale, you put it onto 0, then you put your bowl of almost fully macaronaged batter onto the scale, see how much it weighs, then subtract the bowl amount from that number. Okay, so you're just trying to figure out how much the batter weighs. Then take that number and divide it by 3 or however many batches you are coloring. So just make sure you remember to weigh your bowl first and write it down so you always know how much your bowl weighs, and you can do this really easily. And I will add the food coloring and finish the macaronage in each bowl. I wouldn't do this unless, I wouldn't separate the batter unless you're really confident in your piping and your folding, because this is when you can start to get deflated macarons if you mess this up. So just really make sure you're good at piping very quickly if you're splitting your batter. So then fold each one as fast as you can and then put it all into the piping bags. I like to fold them all a little bit, like fold 20 more times, 20 more times, 20 more times, and then do that each time so they're getting kind of even attention and it's not one sitting while I finish one color. Then I put them all into piping bags and sit the piping bags down and pipe them all out as fast as I can. Okay? You should be sweating or you're not piping fast enough. All right, so what else? Oh, when to add sprinkles. So unless you're dipping them in white chocolate or chocolate, I add the sprinkles right after I pipe and slam down the trays. Right after you've piped all the macarons out and you've taken your guide out and slammed the trays down, then I will sprinkle on sprinkles or chocolate chips or whatever I'm putting on there, pistachios or something. Then I will sprinkle that on. Then it will dry. And for some of the things you sprinkle on top, you really have to make sure that you don't do too much or that you really let the tops dry, because sometimes it takes a little longer to dry if it does have sprinkles or something like that on top. Okay, this is something I get all the time. Why are my macarons hollow? They might not be, okay? I'm gonna show you something because I see a lot of people throwing out perfectly fine macarons because they think they're hollow right when they get them out of the oven. You have to let them mature. I don't even crack one open until it's matured. Okay, like just trust it for the first couple of batches, and then after that you'll know that they'll mature and be fine. Look at this shell. See that? That looks like it's hollow, right? A lot of people say that is a horrible macaron. People would say that's crappy, that's bad. No, that exact macaron turned into this after it was matured. That's a good looking macaron. Look at that. See? That is the same macaron as the one I just showed you. Same batch from the same tray, okay? That one I didn't let mature, and this one I filled and let mature in the fridge for 24 hours, okay? It's very upsetting when I see people throw out hollow macarons that aren't. They will be fine. Just fill them and let them mature. Okay, but if you have matured it for 24 hours and it's still hollow, then I would check things like oven temperature, maybe even your filling. If you have an extra dry filling, like I gotta be careful with peanut butter. That is something that takes a little bit longer to mature. Maybe consider adding something wet to your filling or something like that, or work on your oven temperature this video will help you make a better macaron. If you're still getting hollows, go here and then try this recipe. Also, if you watch this video and you made macarons using this recipe and they're still crappy, then go to the Michelle's Macarons Facebook group and post your picture in there. And I usually suggest that you take pictures along the way of what your batter looks like, what your meringue looks like, everything like that, the almond flour you use, everything, and post that in the Facebook group. And there are so many great macaron bakers in there that will help you figure out what went wrong. Oh, I get this question a lot. I did a troubleshooting macaron video. That was one of my first videos, so I'm a little embarrassed of it. It's got some good information, but I already answered this and that, but what almond flour do I use? So I have used and loved Honeyville, which I bought on Amazon. I will link it in the description. Aldrin Brothers, if you're starting to sell and make them in bulk, I would buy 25-pound bags of almond flour from them. Really liked that one. But now I use Costco. I just use Kirkland, which I hear a lot of people say that it's inconsistent, but it has been fine for me. Like, the inconsistencies haven't been enough for me to not use it, and it's the cheapest. But those are the ones that I've used and liked the most. Oh, if I didn't answer any questions, ask them below and I'll make a part 2 video, or go join the Michelle's Macarons Facebook group and ask the questions in there. If you'd like, you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and I'll put those links in the description. Check out these other macaron videos. Okay, love you, bye.